Hey guys, welcome back to r/MaliciousCompliance, where an awful boss treats her employees like slaves. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one is titled, Insane Karen Boss Wants Me to Be Her Slave. So I'm 67 years old and was involved in an accident at my workplace that led to a spine injury and confined me to a wheelchair. I spent my career in logistics and operations, but after a long loyal stint with the company, I had been hired out of college, and the growing health issues from my accident, I retired a couple years early. I'm a man of the 60s and 70s though, and we are not the kind to sit still at home and watch life go by. It was miserable to think of my days spent doing little to nothing, and I'm pretty sure I near drove my wife insane with the constant anxious activity. I was going to the grocery store a couple times a day in order to just talk to people. One thing I hadn't really considered was a part-time job, but my wife is much smarter than me, so she had everything in order and surprised me by presenting me with a job interview at a boutique pet grooming spa. It was one of those shops that serves the clients who carry their fur babies around in their purses and throw extravagant birthday parties for their cats. And well guys, obviously I totally don't do that. Well, now, I haven't worked with animals professionally, but I've always loved them. For most of my life, I've had a wild assortment of animals filling my house. If it weren't for the strain that taking care of various lizards, dogs, cats, birds, and various rodents placed on an old man in a wheelchair, I still would. Now, I just have two small dogs that my wife refused to part with. I might have been an advocate for taking care of your own animals, but I couldn't turn down the chance to be around animals all day. It was a lot of fun, and the team was mostly young kids, and we all got along well, and the customers grew to love me. I stuck to the front desk for the most part. I would answer the phone, do paperwork and scheduling, check clients in and out, etc. When there wasn't a lot of customer traffic, I would help clean up a bit. You might think I was used to hair after years as a pet owner, but oh my gosh, the hair here, I couldn't really do the actual grooming. Not that they needed me to, the place was well staffed anyway, and I juggled appointments and customers around effortlessly to ensure efficient work. I did have over 40 years of experience in logistics though. After 3 years of part-time work, most of the staff had learned the POS and appointment system from me, and my organization system ran the boutique. Then our manager had to move across the state, and the regional manager decided to hire a woman aptly named Karen. Even though our location was highly successful with spotless reviews, corporate took our manager's move as an opportunity to increase efficiency at our location. So this was apparently an effort to correct underperforming boutiques, and they figured that with our manager gone, we would immediately crumble to pieces after being the highest performing location in our region before. And to increase efficiency, they brought in tyrants that had no experience in pet grooming and pushed extreme goals on them. In the best of cases, the stress would spread throughout the boutique and cause issues. In the worst, they were handing absolute power into the hands of people least prepared to handle it. When Karen first inspected me and found that she had to look a bit lower and take into account my wheelchair as well, she must have not liked what she saw. I assume she expected my age to mean that I couldn't hear well either, because she didn't even try to be quiet when she mumbled, "Oh, we are accommodating? Splendid." Hardly 10 minutes spent in the building and she had already made a formidable enemy. Not that I was gonna take this as any excuse to lash out against her or lessen my effort towards my work. I took pride in what I had built in that boutique and wouldn't want to let down the multitude of regulars who came in expecting to see me either. Karen did not need an excuse to lash out though. She had a decree from corporate practically begging her to. Her strategy to increase efficiency was to destroy anything and anyone she saw as holding back the performance of the branch. She cut hours, pressured staff in ridiculous ways, micromanaged employees she viewed as underperforming regardless of what their numbers reflected, and tore apart our organization system only to never actually replace it. We had our fair share of adult groomers who had been doing this work for a while, but we also had quite a few college students that came and went over the years. Karen hated each and every one of these students and did not miss any opportunity to verbally abuse them for being lazy, tech-obsessed, and generally everything that was wrong with the world. She did not limit her age discrimination to the young staff though, because her statement on accommodation was far from the only insult thrown my way. "Don't tire yourself out, Grandpa. It must have been hard to work out all these newfangled computers, huh? Why are you always sitting down on the job?" If there was anything I'd learned in over 40 years with one company, it's how to lower your head and push through the tough periods. That did not stop the rest of the staff from slowly trickling away though. Even though it was getting harder for us to take care of our normal workload, our regulars were not giving up on us just yet. We had a Saturday come along that was the busiest day we had in 3 months, something like 47 grooming appointments, a few walk-in nail trims that I had to do to keep things moving, and a birthday event for a client's golden retriever. There was actually cake, decorations, dog guests, and a spa treatment for the birthday boy. By the way guys, that sounds like a place that little Disney would love as well. Anyway, to make it better, 2 front desk workers had called out with the flu, leaving me alone on the front desk. Meanwhile, only 2 groomers had been scheduled to save the company precious pennies. Karen, of course, was there, and she walked around and acted important even though she had no clue how to do any job in the boutique other than yelling at us to do ours. It was already an hour past the time I was supposed to clock out when I looked up and saw the time, 2 p.m. I went to Karen and said, "Hey, I was supposed to leave an hour ago, but I can continue to stay later if you need the help. I just need your approval for the overtime." Karen was distracted by work she both didn't want to and wasn't able to do. She waved off my comment and said, "I need you to stay until closing." I worked in logistics for a long time. I was not going to accept half of the answer to my question. CYA. Cover your assets. That means that you will approve my overtime? That will put me at 11 hours for the day in total. I cannot do that, OP. You clocked out an hour ago, according to my records, but I need you until close. Your salary anyway. No, Karen, I'm part-time hourly. I'm not working when I'm not gonna be paid. Karen sighed and actually deemed me worthy to focus on for a few milliseconds. Stay and help us out, or I don't want you to come back to this boutique ever again. I think we all know that asking people to work off the clock is the most consistently agreed upon worst thing you could do to an employee. She later called me into her office again and called me a cripple that doesn't deserve to be working in such an honorable workplace and that I'm wasting everyone's time. She demanded that I better work like a slave for her to prove my worth, else I might as well walk out the door, which would be better for everyone involved. I was shocked at her outright hatred for me. I wanted to be sure that I had this all properly understood. So I want to make sure that I'm hearing this right. If I don't work the rest of the day without pay, then you want me to quit. Quit? I want you to work for free or I'll be firing you, OP. Yeah, right. I went to the computer as if I was happily going along with her insane request. I went straight to our employee portal and filed an HR claim with as much of the incident as precisely described as I could get it, as well as some email documentation of early poor conduct. I do keep records, and I also quickly hopped into Word and typed up a resignation letter with a clear indicator that the hiring of Karen directly led to this decision. Then I took off my name tag and said goodbye to Karen as I wheeled out of the door. So the rest comes mostly in stories from the few workers that were still on payroll. Karen had no clue how to do anything with the POS system, the groomers knew enough to get by, but with the workload hanging over their heads that day, they would need Karen to help with the grooming. This was another absolute no in Karen's world. She told the regular that the company didn't do loyalty points anymore, rather than try to help them access the rewards. Not long after this incident, Karen got a call from corporate who had been receiving a host of escalated complaints. She proceeded to scream at the customers until they were all out of the door and locked the place up early. A video of her rant later went viral, along with another video of her screaming a lecture at a college kid for being lazy while he was in the midst of bathing 4 large dogs back to back to back. Karen was then on administrative leave by Monday, and by Friday she was gone for good. The company claimed they would do everything in their power to rebuild trust in the employees and the community, but still, the damage was done. After I left, the last few full-time groomers got poached by a local pet spa that had opened in the area recently. The regulars had watched things go downhill, but it wasn't until I left that they fully knew that they wouldn't support this company anymore. The location that used to be the top performer in the region and was well loved by its community shut its doors within 3 months of me rolling out the door. HR sent me a formal apology with a gift card and a written acknowledgement of discrimination. I've never been one with thin skin, and I wasn't about to waste time in my retirement pursuing a suit, so I let them get away with it. I did learn how much I loved working with animals at the boutique, even with the poor ending with the company though. I decided to volunteer at a local animal shelter and run the front desk a few days a week. There's not a Karen in the world that will work for meager animal shelter pay, but I would have done it for free. And the next one is another fantastic malicious compliance story that you don't want to miss. And if you enjoyed these stories, please don't forget to like the video. It would be amazing if we could reach 1000 likes, and also post a comment because that helps me tremendously. Thanks a lot for the support, and the next one is titled, Take the chairs away from our work area. We are gonna F this place up. So I work for a major US airline for a long time and at several airports. There's an area behind the baggage counter where the bags get sorted for their respective flights after they've been checked. We are on our feet most of the time, but we each have chairs at our workstations, so we can sit and rest for a minute when there's a lull in bags coming down. Every few years there will be a damn new manager who's gonna turn this airport around and make it the best performing one in the system, and they all seem to have the same idea. Take away the chairs so the agents are always standing at the belt. Now, the agents in this area are generally on the senior side as it's indoors and out of the elements, and we have done the job for a while. We know how to do the job efficiently, and we really do our best to avoid F-ups, but as long as human error is a factor, there will always be some. Taking our chairs does nothing but piss us off. Their BS excuse usually is framing it as a safety issue or a tripping hazard. So that's where we start. Smaller or oddly shaped bags get sent down in a plastic tub so they don't jam the belt. Maybe you have seen them. We take them off the belt, stack them up on the ground for someone to come by and collect. Not anymore though. We let them pile up on the belt, making it a giant pain in the ass for the poor idiot collecting them, and they are complaining constantly to the manager. We say, sorry boss, they're a tripping hazard on the ground. Next, we start following the rules. Our employee handbook lays out very clearly what the company's expectations for us are in our job duties. We are only expected to pull one bag per minute and take bags out no later than 20 minutes before the flight departs. Maybe you guessed already, but those expectations are nowhere near good enough to actually complete these tasks. So by the company's own rules, we were already going well beyond what was expected of us. So then, we start giving them the bare minimum, one bag per minute 20 minutes prior. The manager was pissed. He and the supervisors were throwing bags, and us being unionized, we documented and grieved every single time it happened, and the company a few days later had to pay out several thousands to agents for covered work. Delays across the board, and 1,500 bags missed that day. The next morning, the chairs were back in their spots and we continued as normal, and afterwards no one would give that manager the time of day. By the way, a lot of passengers got screwed over that day, but we were working exactly to the rules our company had given us, so you can blame the airline and not the agents. The handbook was changed after a while, but only extending it to 35 minutes prior instead of 20, it's still one bag per minute last I looked. Also, I was lucky enough to be a part of 3 of these events over the years, but this was the most satisfying one. And the next one is another malicious compliance story. It is titled, You Wanna Review Every Client Interaction? Perfect, your inbox is about to blow up. So I've been working at this small marketing agency for just over a year now. It is my first real job after college, and I've been thrilled to have actual clients and responsibilities. Well, I was thrilled until we got a new account manager, Debbie, not her real name obviously, and Debbie came from one of those corporate mega agencies where apparently they micromanage the living daylights out of everyone. From day one, she had concerns about my communication style with clients, but mind you, I've been praised by these same clients for being responsive and helpful. Last month, after I sent what I thought was a perfectly normal email to our biggest client about a small scheduling change, Debbie called an emergency meeting. From now on, I need to approve all client communications before they go out, she announced with that big smile that fake managers use when they are being unreasonable but pretending that they are helping you. Everything, emails, phone calls, text messages, meeting agendas, send them to me first for review. When I pointed out that this would slow down our response times, she just waved her hand dismissively. It's about quality control. Better to be right than fast. Fine. You want all communications? You got it, Debbie. So I started that very afternoon. Every single thing, if a client asked what time a call was scheduled, I drafted an email response and sent it to Debbie, awaiting your approval on this time confirmation. If a client texted asking for a quick file, I would screenshot it and email Debbie, please approve my response to this text message. I even created a special folder in my drafts called Awaiting Debbie's Approval and set up an automated counter. By the end of day 1, I had sent her 17 approval requests, and by the end of the week, it was over 100. The best part though, I stopped answering my phone when clients called. Instead, I would let it go to voicemail and then email Debbie. Client X called about Y. My proposed response is attached. Please approve. After about 2 weeks, Debbie was getting drowned. She would fall behind on approving my communications, which meant clients were not getting responses. They started escalating to her directly, which doubled her workload. The breaking point came when our biggest client emailed both of us complaining about delays. I responded to the client with, "I forwarded your concerns to Debbie for approval of my response. Once approved, I will get back to you promptly." The next morning, Debbie stopped by my desk looking exhausted. "I think we need to adjust our approval process," she said, trying to maintain her corporate dignity. "Moving forward, just use your judgment for routine communications. Only send me things that involve project scope, timeline changes, or budget discussions." "Are you sure?" I asked innocently. "I have about 30 draft responses waiting for your review right now." She visibly cringed. "That won't be necessary anymore." I've been happily sending emails without approval for 2 weeks now. Debbie barely makes eye contact in the hallway, and honestly, that's fine by me. The best part though? My quarterly review is coming up, and all those approval emails are documented proof that I've been trying my absolute best to follow company protocol. Sometimes malicious compliance is the best teacher. And now let's move on to the next story. It starts like this. And the next one is a petty revenge story. So a few years ago, my partner and I purchased a block of land that we were planning on leveling and building our forever home on, but due to rising building costs, we have, unfortunately, had to hold off building at this point and have been utilizing the space as a dog run / chill point, as we have both ocean and mountain views. About 6 months ago, we started to notice tire tracks running through our property from one side all the way to the other. Always the same path taken, so we now have 2 beautiful deep tire tracks on our property. Awesome! No worries though, we popped up a fence to deter people from driving through, and yep, they drove through the fence. We would put it back up, and the very next time we would go out there, the fence was driven through again. At this point, this has been going on for about 6 months, and during that time, we decided to stop mowing the lawn, hopefully make it a bit more challenging for them to drive through. But nope, they continue to drive through. No worries though, we will just keep it growing. Love the look, plus bonus points for not having to worry about maintenance. The other great thing about long grass is that you can hide all kinds of things there, and since our property that we are just leaving bare, we can obviously start storing some goods on there, like metal star pickets. They also sit in the ground on just the right angle to puncture your radiator if you try to drive through it without knowing it is there. The last time I visited our property, there was some nicely bent star pickets strewn about. Some had been snapped clean and a few that had very clearly been thrown in anger. It turns out tow trucks make big grooves in grass. And the next one is another petty revenge story. Backstory: here in Sweden, there's a huge difference in house prices between popular areas and major cities compared to the countryside. This meant that I was able to buy a small fixer-upper house at the age of 23, 4 years ago, on a very average income. There was only me and one other bidder involved, and I eventually won the bidding at a reasonable price. The house is located a bit outside our town, with only one other house next to it, as well as an empty lot. Shortly after moving in, an older guy came knocking on my door. He told me that he was the other bidder and the owner of the empty property, and he only wanted my house in order to tear it down and make more space for his friends' RVs. He finished by essentially saying, "Enjoy your pile of junk." Since then, he has spent most of the summers in a lawn chair next to his RV on the empty property, with a clear view up my driveway and shooting me dirty looks every time I walked or drove by. Now, as I said, the house is a project and I've made many improvements over the years as time and money has allowed. There's always something that needs doing on the house, and I'm also the designated mechanic for friends and family. There's usually a car or two getting repaired in my garage. This means a lot of noisy tools. I've made sure to always start some kind of project when I see him sit down in his chair. This has gone on for a few summers now, and the way it goes is like this. He gives me dirty looks and I make noise. Only on reasonable hours though. I don't do anything he can reasonably complain about. Today, I continued on my bedroom remodeling, and it seems my circular saw finally broke him. He turned his RV around and put the chair in the opposite direction. When there is an actual view as compared to my driveway, I see this as a total victory. And the next one is another revenge story. posted by user mediumsavings4968 on r/ripe stories. And by the way, if you have any stories of your own to share, then please head on over to r/ripe stories on Reddit, where you can post your own full-length stories. And if the story is interesting, there's a good chance I will read it in a video. This one starts like this. The background of the story starts in the late 70s, early 80s. My dad had just moved to town, barely going out with my mom. My dad was down on his luck and out of a job just moving to the area when he applied to a local publication company. The company published a newspaper, a pair of magazines, and on occasion some large local event-related specials. The publication firm offered my dad a job at the lowest level in the printing presses. My dad takes the job eagerly. Dad for the next 20 years moves his way through the various parts of the company, doing multiple positions with always very pleased managers. My dad always went above and beyond for his co-workers, for example, fills in for them no questions asked, takes overtime, and volunteers for the harder assignments. My dad had made it to the supervisor levels but got moved so he could know the whole business in its entirety. Me personally, I grew up in the 90s and lived to watch this whole thing through till the last moment. I find myself thinking fondly of watching him work, watching him talk, and sitting in his office with his co-workers. In 2000, the publication company was bought out from a private owner and sold to a smallish publication firm. That firm only held it for a few years before selling it to the highest bidder, and so a larger publication firm took it over. The new company starts by firing anyone non-union and hires new staff at a lower wage. Slowly, the company begins to fire union members by using various methods. In that time, my dad had seen a great many good co-workers be either retired, fired, or forced out. My dad went through a great many bosses. My dad had an older legacy union contract, so they definitely would have trouble firing him. So the company moved my dad through varying departments, and finally, as a last-ditch effort, they move him to work in the distribution department. The company called it a horizontal promotion. My dad worked in that department until 2011. At the start of 2011, my dad was introduced to a young new manager, the kid my dad called him. Considering my dad's age, anyone could have been called a kid, by the way. So my dad was asked to train the kid on how dad did his job so well. So, my dad took the kid along for a ride-along. My dad likes to use the personal touch when it comes to meetings. Rather than over the phone or in mail, my dad prefers sit-downs and in-person meetings with people. So my dad took the kid to varying convenience stores, salons, and just about anywhere the publication would be either displayed, subscribed to, or sold. My dad always kept up with new shops in the area so he could make appointments with varying store owners and have new places for sales. The kid stayed in the car or was more occupied with his smartphone. My dad also showed the kid how to do research and write up projection reports. Keep in mind, these reports were voluntary, not required, but the higher-ups appreciated them, and they also helped my dad keep his job. Now, each year my father would put in a bid for a territory in the distribution department. I should note my dad also taught the kid how to make his own bid. The bid itself consisted of basically how much it would cost to do his job, including operation costs, fuel, etc., and then show how much distribution he could gain over that year. He, each year alongside his bid, would include his projection report as evidence, and for clarification, you wanted to have a larger distribution but for the lowest cost as far as the company was concerned. Well, the kid notes to dad that he's gonna place a bid on a territory, and my dad encourages him. My dad was shocked when he found out that he was outbid by the kid for the same territory. The kid had well underbid my dad by 50%. The kid's strategy was to use cold calls, email, and ads for new distribution. He projected his sales to double over the next year by cutting staff and needless driving around. My dad knew the kid's report was falsified as his figures didn't make any mathematical sense. My dad knew the company lived on these reports and warned his higher-ups once he got to see the kid's projection report. Since dad's bid was rejected, the company used this as an excuse to fire my father. So my dad packed his desk and left, and on the day my dad was fired, he realized he never submitted the projection report to his higher-ups, and since that report was voluntary, my dad withheld the report out of pettiness. My dad found out through a friend/former co-worker that the kid was a plant from the parent company. He was solely hired to outmaneuver my father. Nothing we can prove due to lack of evidence, but he had access to my father's bids bids. The bids were supposed to be kept secret, only known to the company, not the distributors, and as said earlier, faked his projection report. My dad was hurt, but my dad decided to pick himself up and started a convenience store. In the following years at Dad's former job, the kid messed up time after time. What the kid didn't know was two things. First was certain allowances like travel, fuel expenses, budget for buying shelf space, etc. Basically, the company was paying my dad to drive to the locations and stir up new business. The second thing, and a bigger one, my dad had made a prediction in his projections. His prediction was that distribution was gonna plummet. Why, you ask? The app-based and digital-based market was growing. People were now able to get their publications on smartphones via their email or read directly on their computer on a web browser. The kid put in another bid the next year and the year following. Each time the company went along with him and they lost more and more distribution. Convenience stores were no longer going to be carrying any of their publications due to loss of sales and strained relationships. Home subscriptions were going to rival publications that already had a digital presence, and so the company was barely holding on. The publication blamed the kid for the sales loss and for not seeing this on the horizon. They approached my father 3 years after firing him, begging him to return, but my dad said absolutely no to his former managers. My dad ended up starting a chain of 3 convenience stores. Meanwhile, his former job, the publication company, tried to stir up a digital version too little too late. The company is now a shadow of what it once was. My dad's last contact inside told us the following: you cannot really find their publications in any convenience stores. The printing press is now in another state. The home delivery department constantly tries to fight with USPS for lower delivery costs, and the distribution department was whittled down to 2 people, formerly 12. They are down to a single magazine and a newspaper that nobody heard of. And yeah, thank you very much for sharing this interesting revenge story. Your dad definitely did the right thing here, I would say, and the company did not treat him fairly, that's for sure. However, Ripe Stars, I'm curious, do you read any print magazines or newspapers? Maybe I'm old school, but I still like to read certain newspapers and some magazines, usually game-related stuff though when it comes to magazines. It's just different than reading all of this online. However, I do know that most people nowadays prefer to read their stuff online, which I of course also do, but having it in print is just different. And before we end the video, let's read one last funny story from r/MaliciousCompliance. It is titled, "Drive an 8-ton backhoe 5 miles down 2-lane highway at 15 miles per hour? Okie dokie." So I worked for this horrendous a-hole when I was 19 for $8 per hour, and he hated that I worked 2 other jobs. I never missed a shift, but he would let me work late on purpose, knowing I would only get 4 hours of sleep before school, just so I might quit one or both of my jobs. Anyway, I show up to work for my 4 p.m. shift, and my boss tells me to take the backhoe down to ABC Business because we have a crew of 10 guys ready to load gear onto pallets and I need to put them on the truck. Well, you know, the thing is, ABC Business was 5 miles away and the tractor only goes 15 miles per hour top speed, so I'm like, are you sure? It's only a 2-lane road most of the way, and he cuts me off and says, "Quit arguing. If you say another word, you're fired." I was mad. I don't take disrespect kindly, and it certainly was not worth $8 per hour, so I get about 20 minutes into my drive and he starts blowing my phone up. The tractor is loud, so I played it off like I did not hear the phone. Back before people mostly put their phones on vibrate, I get about halfway there and I realize he was probably talking about ABC Business's old location that shut down 6 months ago and is only about 1 mile from the origination as opposed to 5 miles. So what do? I drove the rest of the way and kindly called my boss back to inform him the location was empty and nobody showed up. Of course, he meant the old location, and although he suspected me of malicious compliance, he chalked it up to incompetence of a 19-year-old kid and sent everyone else home with 2 hours pay. He was so furious because he couldn't yell at me for being dumb, and I got the rest of the night off after my long drive home, pulling over every 30 feet or so to let people pass on the highway. Little wins are all we get sometimes, and I savor this one even 12 years later. And yeah guys, I hope you enjoyed the stories. I will see you again tomorrow. And please don't forget to check out my playlist on the left if you cannot get enough of my stories.